Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Clueless Capitalist, where we discover interesting startups, interview founders, and help you become less clueless with angel investing. My name is Razi.
And I'm Osman, and welcome to the Clueless Capitalist.
In this episode, we're going to be looking at Get. Get is Asia's first neobank for kids and teens. Its mission is to empower parents with tools that make it easier to raise financially smart kids and teens. And they have an ambition to become Asia's largest financial institution dedicated for people aged 8 to 18. Joining us is the CEO and founder of Get, Daniel Liang. Welcome to the episode, Daniel.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
So we're going to start with your pitch deck. So run us through your pitch deck, and then afterwards we'll get into the questions.
I'll give a quick overview of the Get thesis, which is quite simple. Get is Asia's first neobank and Visa card for kids and teens across Asia. And the mission here is to empower parents with tools that make it easier for them to raise financially smart kids and teens. The premise of the company's the thesis is quite simple, which is that in the world today, both in emerging and developed markets, there is a rapidly growing demand for a much more compelling banking experience, for kids and teens and their parents as well. But the supply side, which the banks and the financial institution, to meet that demand, that could actually supply to meet that demand, have enterprise-wide constraints in doing so. And so, Get's ambition here is to build Asia's largest financial institution and fill that gap. And if doing so, could be a very valuable company. Now, the product that Get has to actually, as an entry into that thesis, is quite simple. So Get today is actually the first way that a kid and teen 8 to 18 can have a full banking experience. And what that means is to receive, spend, send, and save their money in a single app-based account. And for the parent, whilst giving and empowering the kid and teen to start that from an early age, is to have these very custom controls across all their kids, flexible but very granular. For example, blacklisting, whitelisting, toggling on and off a specific channels, not being able to take money out and cash out to buy cigarettes. And separately, they can also receive beautiful monitoring, across their family as well to keep them safe. For example, receiving a little push notification saying Sophia just spent $14 at McDonald's Orchard with a little hamburger emoji, and just really understanding the desires of the heart with their kids and teens, and before they go off and become an adult and have independent banking. The business model eventually is that it will be a part of the thesis is to become a B2B business that sits on top of the products and experience and resources that the company has in delivering for their market. Some of the examples of this is, we've seen across the world with the way that the thesis eventually develops out, whether it be JP Morgan, Wells Fargo collaborating with Greenlight in the US, or in the UK, City Ventures collaborating with GoHenry, and in Australia, NAB Ventures collaborating with Spriggy. And so in the Asia region, we do see that some of the banks have started discussions about how can Get help them to actually meet that growing demand in that 8 to 18-year-old segment without them having to do the heavy lifting. And that might come in the form of 2 commercial arrangements. It could be a graduation business model. So when all the kids and teens every single year, when they graduate in 18 and they need a full adult bank account, Get can graduate that through an auction-based pricing model. Second, it could also be a white labeling model that can use the traditional bank's branding and their skin and the colors as well. But Get provides all the tools that they can use to then deliver to their customers, but just have a little logo powered by Get, for example. And on the consumer side, Get also has membership fees for 3 tiers right now, which on the left-hand side, you can see amongst the 4 pillars of revenue that support the business plan. Just to take a quick look here on the left side, the first 3 pillars are actually the consumer side that the business has to support itself, and on the right-hand side, distribution as a service is the future B2B model. But the key driver for a lot of the revenue is the number of plans that we sell, and $60 is core banking, $120 unlocks per child per year, unlocks investing, and Get Infinity would unlock educational lessons on top of investing and core banking throughout the year. So far, Get has been growing very rapidly with 7% week-on-week growth in terms of the number of paying customers that it has. So far, as of right now, Get started pricing its accounts around 26 weeks ago, when the software or the version of software got a bit more mature, and we felt like it was right time to start pricing. And there's a lot of things that we still want to improve of the software and experience. But once we get to that version, hopefully by the end of the year, we'll then soon be able to distribute and a bit more aggressively and spread the word a bit more across 2024. And our target is to help 10% of families in Singapore, which is around 20,000 families, and hopefully reach a 1.2 to 2.4 million in revenue by the end of 2024. So that's a very short summary. There's a lot of parts of the thesis in execution to reach our ambition that does need to be de-risked and does need to be thought about, and hopefully we can talk about those a bit more.
Thanks, Daniel. So great to understand. Thanks for sharing. I think my first question really is just going to be like probably the type of question that anybody who's not familiar with the industry is going to ask. Why is this important? Aren't banks providing capabilities for young people, for tweens? And there are new entrants coming into the market as well. Companies like Wise, for example, or Utrip. Do they not appeal to that market segment, and or are they not? Or is there something fundamentally that they're missing?
Yeah, I guess what we're discussing here is really, again, a supply and supply demand question. So, and what I mean by that is, the premise of Get is because that it's on the belief that the supply side isn't actually meeting the customer's demand. So first we have to define, what that demand is, and it's really can be split largely into two things. One is, really having compelling banking experience for kids and teens, and what that actually means is, the banking experience that we get as adults, which is, you can receive any way you need to if you get a job, or if you receive money from family, or if you need to send money to anywhere, if you need to spend to anywhere, and if you want to save money beautifully, you can have these. It's much more abundant in terms of our options. But really, for people between the age of 8 to 18, when it comes to having all that banking in a single place, there is really no option out there. But there is demand for that, because today's kids and teens are much more different than generations before. They pretty much live completely in a digital world, and their pocket money experience needs to actually fit in that new world today. And I'll go a bit more detail about what that means later. The second thing is that parents is on the belief that all parents have their kids' long-term interests in mind, and when it comes to having understood raising children and understanding that it takes a lot of hard work and wanting to impart good habits as they go on to grow up as well, and for future generations, that just to ask the question, what's the most effective way to teach my kids and teens about and becoming more aware about money from an early age. So because of that demand, we look at the supply side of the market, who can actually fill that gap, and there's really can be bucketed into three categories. One is it's actually direct competitors and entrepreneurs building products that are dedicated to kids and teens to solve this. The second is actually late stage fintech, and the third is traditional banks. So just starting with traditional banks, all traditional banks around the world, the business model of a bank is to actually lend money. If you look at the profit and loss statement, 90% of the income comes from interest income, and just because legally you can't lend money to kids and teens, so they don't actually fit in the business model of a bank. But also just operationally, the way that a bank is set up in terms of all their branches, all their legacy infrastructure, just commercially, and with competitive pressure when it comes to late stage fintech, competing against the 18 to 70-year-old market and all their other markets. It's not a commercial priority for them. The servicing costs, when it comes to transaction monitoring, or when it comes to servicing customers, the amount of money that they're generating from kids and teens, it's just not worth focusing on that time. And this is stemming from having extensive conversation with bank executives across the region, saying that this is just simply not their focus, and Get should focus on this, and eventually partner with them later. So the second is when it comes to late stage fintech, companies such as Wise, as you mentioned, many of these, or even GXS Bank or Grab in the region. So a lot of them on the left hand side here are really, their core focus is to focus on needs of adults or professionals, business, FX sensitive travelers, and the workforce. And that's their core competency, and they still have a large market in there, but that's the focus. So if you look at Wise or Revolut, it was, or Utrip, it was really built for people between the ages of maybe just after university, all the way if you're traveling, to enjoy low FX rates. Even for a lot of late stage fintech, they're actually becoming banks. That's the way we're seeing it. So GXS Bank has gotten a banking license as to lend money, and part of that regulatory approval to actually give them a license is that they can't deviate from their business plan to generate their revenue projections, and that means interest income. So a lot of late stage fintech are now, because of their profitability pressures, are actually becoming banks. So what we're seeing is that in the top left quadrant, many of these traditional so late stage fintech is actually trying to take customers away from 18 all the way to 7 years old from the traditional banks customer base. But over the next few years, the traditional banks are actually busy trying to defend by going through a digital transformation strategy to defend their customer base from the late stage fintech. So in this category 8 to 18, it's actually really untapped. It's an untapped gold mine, and we call it a blind spot because it doesn't fit in the commercial model. But it may make sense for a dedicated venture that's actually just built from day one, dedicated to this category. And so in the region, when it comes to direct ventures, we think that what really makes our product competitive is that it's a product driven competitive advantage. So many of the parents and kids will retain and stay with the account that they enjoy using the app experience, don't have issues, that is kind of manifested in the range of, for example, the parental controls and child safety tools, and being really thoughtful about that. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I'm just going to add some narrative, Daniel, because the reason why I'm struggling to understand, and don't worry, we'll cut out some of this, but when I was a kid a long time ago, back in the 1980s, I got my first bank account, and the bank account was targeted at my age group in early teens, and they gave me we didn't need to use banks as much as we do now. Credit cards weren't that common, but even in that day and age, they were targeting accounts for young kids, to give them an ATM card. You felt really grown up. You had an ATM card, you can get your money out, you could put your money in, all that kind of stuff. And that was back in the 1980s. So the reason for them doing that was because they genuinely felt that if I get the kids into an account, they're going to be lifetime users with my bank. At that time, that bank was the Midland Bank. Now it's called HSBC. I'm 46 years old now, and I still have that HSBC account, and I use it. So it kind of ticks that narrative, like they thought that I'd be a lifetime customer. I am. I really don't move from them. So what I'm really struggling to understand is how that narrative, they've not kept up with the times. People are heavily digital dependent now. You've got everything on the phone. You need credit cards to actually marry up with your wallet, and what I'm hearing from you is the traditional banks haven't moved on. They haven't caught up. I'm really genuinely struggling to understand how that's even possible, considering they were really, I would say they were already addressing this particular problem in the 1980s.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So perhaps I can speak to this kind of the timeline and where it's at now. Perhaps I could just start off with where it's at now. With the banks, trying to serve this customer base if they are, and what that actually means to actually try today. And what it looks like for a typical 14-year-old, that's actually given this option from the bank, and I can go back about history about banks and how fintech has changed as well. So to this, I just want to share screen a little bit here. Okay. So in Singapore today, or just generally across the world, for a typical 13 or 14-year-old, this is what it kind of looks like today. And so what I'm trying to show here is that a typical 13-year-old to have their day-to-day banking, even in very developed market like Singapore, they still need to rely on array of 4 or 5 solutions together for their day-to-day banking. For example, you need to have four solutions. One is a limited e-wallet, where for example, like a Grab Pay, but it's a light KYC version because they don't have the government issued IDs yet to reach the full KYC. You also have a savings account, which is one that you would open, your parents would open for you when you were 1 year old, for example, and you would adopt that later, which is really a savings account that's under the parent's name, and you would get an ATM cash card with it to take money out. But the problem with that is you don't have your own app interface. You can't actually send money where you need to. It's just a cash card. You can't spend all the places that you actually need to. And the third thing that you rely on is to be 14. You also have a transport card, like an EasyLink card, a top-up card, where you can use for transport, but you can't spend it anywhere you need to. And you also have a parent supplementary card, but there's no but the parents don't like it because the kid spending is cobbled together with their parents, and the kids have no concept of budgeting for the money as well. And so this is what it looks like for a 14-year-old today. And this is just it just shows that kids don't have that compelling bank experience where they can have being able to receive, spend, and save all in one place. But with Get, what they can do is actually have that all in one place. And so banks offering accounts for. So I just want to speak to what we were talking about before, is that banks have these attempts to actually serve parents by offering these child savings accounts, and that shows their interest in that category. But what I mentioned before about actually meet the demand that customers have in this age group, which is have a compelling bank experience, having those very granular parental controls. Banks they recognize that demand, but they won't actually effort to actually meet that demand that people have today. And so offering a savings account and the ATM cash card is likely as far as they will go into actually meeting that demand. So there is still that shortfall in terms of satisfying customers right now with what banks are offering. And yeah, so is that kind of clear a little bit? Yeah, so they have interest, and that's shown in offering discounts, but that's just within their current capacity, capability, and to really stretch themselves and flip their enterprise around to try to meet the demand. It's not within their interest. Just going back even a decade ago, and we'll go back to when yourself, Osman, when you opened that kids account, which is a savings account by HSBC, at the time there were no competing or alternatives for customers. Banks were the only ones that could actually provide some sort of financial product. But in the past 5 years, a lot of I guess two things have changed. One is that have allowed ventures and startups to actually provide much more superior, or have the attempt to provide much more superior experiences. Two things. One, the regulations across Asia and across countries have changed. New payments regimes that pretty much allow fintechs to actually provide a banking experience. And secondly, the technology that's available, such as open APIs with banks, the banking infrastructure have gotten a lot more sophisticated, which provides soil which startups and entrepreneurs can actually try to build an experience on top of this to then serve customers. So what I'm trying to say there is that because of that new infrastructure, the banks do realize that there's a lot more digital experience, a lot more competition that has come up for them, and they need to pick their focus today, which is really to earn interest and to lend money and credit assessments.
Just to stop you there, how does it compare with POSB has a product called the Smart Buddy app, How does Get compare to that? So it's like it comes with a watch, it comes with a card, and also an app where you can monitor and essentially educate your kids on savings and finance related things. Is it similar, or is it targeted at a much younger demographic and hence is not the same as Get?
Yeah, so Smart Buddy is actually an extension of the POSB Kids Savings account we spoke about, and it's really it can be just considered as what I understand from public information, a way for some of the schools to adopt for their canteens, like a cashless way to collect payments, and then using a watch or which can put a kind of a chip in or NFC enabled, use that as an instrument to draw money from the savings account to pay within the school. So that's largely what it is, and it's more for kids nowadays, where there is a trend of parents actually buying these wearables, which is considered like a smartphone for your kid before the age that they can actually use an actual smartphone, because parents still need to communicate with their kids, but they don't want their kids to have the access to the broader internet before they turn 13, for example. So 8-year-old to 13-year-old, you might give your kid a wearable. And actually, just want to speak to that. Get is with a Get Visa card, the parents can actually enable, like if they get a kid any of the smartwatches, Get Visa card can be added onto there and be used as a payable as well on any of the merchants. But yeah, with the Smart Buddy, it's really dedicated to some of the public schools within Singapore. And just zoom out, if we think about Asia as well, DBS is one of the most modern banks in the region, if not in the world as well. But they've done a great job of that. But what I've understood is it's limited to some of the schools.
So maybe let's go on to the numbers, right? So you mentioned that you're looking to get 20,000 families using Get. So what number are you at now? Like, how many users do you have?
Yeah, so Get really decided, in February this year, in 2023, that it would start pricing its accounts as a way for it to build an enduring institution. So the servicing cost for an account is really very close to zero for the Get as an institution. It's largely API driven solution, and it's supported by AWS service and some bank APIs. On the revenue side, Get decided that it would just first charge a $60 per child per year plan. It was an affordable affordable price for a lot of parents in Singapore. If you consider how much parents in raising a child and raising a teen in Singapore, they're already spending around 2,400 top up their kids' EasyLink card per year, 2,400 plus when it comes to their food. And so $60 for money skills that last a lifetime was an affordable price. So since February, Get has accumulated, has been adopted by almost 600 paying customers today. And so a lot of that has been adopted through word of mouth. Many of the parents go to their brothers and sisters' homes and start discussing about their kids and talk about this new Get solution that they've adopted to manage their pocket money and how they're controlling their kids' spending. To share in the company's KPI for the end of 2024. Get really has two stages to get there. One is that it's to get to a version of the product which I guess in the startup world we call it product market fit. As a software company, actually Get is refining its version every single day. When it comes to talking to customers. So we're at version 370. So we want to, by the end of the year, Get wants to get to a version which has a few statistics which we measure. Once we get there, we consider, okay, we think we got to the right version where this cohort of customers truly love the experience and, for example, have a 9 out of 10 likelihood that they're going to spontaneously recommend to their friends and colleagues when they're like out. And so, yeah, hopefully by end of December, we'll get this version. And then in 2024 throughout, that's when we use that version and above to aggressively distribute that version, to get to at least 10 to 20,000 memberships by the end of the year with that version. And that hopefully then we can start employing a bit more some broader or aggressive distribution channels, such as partnering with third-party financial and non-financial institutions, so they can package Get as part of like a perk to their client base, and vice versa. Or it could be through schools, it could be through tuition centers, and having that cross partnership distribution, but more employing wider distribution strategies across 2024. Once we get that version.
Just walk me through the 600 paying customers. How long has it taken you to acquire them? And you mentioned a 7% week-on-week growth. How long has that been tracking for?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think just want to characterize the growth, that the way that it has been growing is it's really the number of first paid children that the first year plans that we are on a weekly basis. And when we first started, it was about two plans when it's starting in February, and then the next week it's 4 plans that we're selling. So although the numbers are small in the early days, we have exponentially been, every week it's been growing in the number of new plans that we've sold within that week, and it's accumulated to selling about 40 plans throughout a week. The reason why it has been exponential is because we're having more customers that are talking about us more. So the paying customers are spreading a bit more about Get Core. There is a graph that we're showing that with our improving product, which can be measured through the Net Promoter Score from a teens and parents perspective, are actually are correlated to the growth of new trials that are happening on the Get experience. So Get does provide families with a 30-day experience to see whether the product is really for them as well.
What's holding you back?
Yeah, so I think we ourselves are actually trying to not aggressively distribute right now. We actually are rapidly trying to get to a version of the product which we think at every stage of the customer journey has a beautiful experience. As a software experience, once you get there, what it means is that every customer from that version on would experience that beautiful version. And so our team is really focused on getting to that version, as opposed to just trying to aggressively distribute. So what we're really focused on now is to improve our key product metrics, and we want to witness this through improving cohort performance and product. And there's 3 metrics that we really focus on. That one is the retention, in terms of after the family onboards and they make the first 2 transactions, 120 days later, is their kid still using it? So that's retention. Is the family still transacting and managing the pocket money through Get? Second is engagement. One of the key statistics we use is that we consider a child engaged if they're using on average in a month at least 3 transactions on Get throughout a week. So we classify that as engaged profile. So Get has around 64% of customers that are considered engaged, and so we want to improve in the way and understand how can we improve that for the customers that aren't as engaged. Is it that they don't know that they could use Get for certain locations, or what it might be? So that and then fixing that experience as well. And then finally, the Net Promoter Score, which is the likelihood of recommending Get spontaneously to a friend or colleague, which we started off with 4.5. Today it's a 7.3 for a parent, and so we really want to get to 9. So we would really focus on getting to a version and a cohort with some target statistics out of those 3, and then once we get there, then we are ready to really aggressively distribute.
All right, cool. I think for me, the other main question is that I wasn't completely clear what your target geographic market is. So, for example, you've done a comparison with Europe and America. Which regions are you really focused on here in Asia?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Get is really focused on trying to help all the parents, across the Asia region. And right now it's starting right here in Singapore first. In Asia, there are 86 million kids and teens, between the ages of 10 to 18 today. outside of India and China. So Get is really, I think there's a slide here that shows just a couple of the ASEAN countries that Get wants to have its products be available for families.
Okay, so that's Singapore, which is where you're live in now with the 600 active users. Indonesia, it says it's ready to launch. What does that mean?
Yeah, so when Get really looks at its regional availability status, there's really three things. One is whether we're partnered, whether we're ready to launch and transacting. So ready to launch is pretty much the stage before transacting. It pretty much means that we've got the product ready to go, and in our case, what that means is having the integrations with local payment and the banking rails, and having the instruments ready that's required to actually have the customers being able to have that banking experience within the country. So, for example, in Indonesia, what Get did was to switch out, where PayNow was connected, which is the connection or the plug into the local banking network, so kids and teens could actually pay merchants locally. So switch that out for a connection to the QRIS network in Indonesia, which would then enable kids and teens to be able to use the Get app and scan there. So that having that connection itself is considered ready to launch. Aside from, for example, having Indonesian Bahasa version across all the app and to change the currencies as well.
If I've just trimmed that down a little bit, in Indonesia you've got a partner, everything's more or less ironed out, and then you just like localizing it and making it ready to go.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but it's really important that we make sure that all the operations also could meet all the regulatory requirements as well, and then make sure that it's ready to scale as well, because we do know that once it does open up, these things can scale quite quickly. Yeah.
Okay, so how big is the market in Indonesia?
Yeah, so Indonesia today is 40 million kids and teens aged 10 to 18. It does account for close to 50% of Asia's kids and teen population.
Got it. Okay, and if you're looking at, just doing a quick comparison with Singapore, I mean, what magnitude of scale is Indonesia bigger than Singapore?
Well, I think it really has to, we have to look at, personally as an entrepreneur, when I look at this, I think it depends on how we're really measuring it. I think of course with population, it's much larger. When it comes to actually building out this thesis, I think Indonesia can in the long term can be much larger. I think when we're building this out, we do have, as an entrepreneur, we have to consider being prudent and trying to build a profitable institution, just considering the macroeconomic conditions as well. So when we look at Asia, we do split up the market into developed and emerging markets, emerging being Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and some of these, our pricing model very likely for some of these markets would just waive the membership fees completely, which would mean that we would take a bet on the B2B business model that sits on top of the customers in the medium to long term. And so that is a bit more of a risky approach. So it's really, in the short term, it might mean that you won't earn that profit that you would in a developed market, where we could be profitable at a certain threshold of customers and generate free cash flow. But in the long term, some of these emerging markets, given their population, multiplied by the lifetime value that the banks are valuing each account within their country, could be much larger in total.
So, and I think you mentioned this before, earlier on in a separate conversation that we had. Singapore, you've got your own license, is that correct?
Well, in Singapore, actually, Get just for Get product, Get it offers full payment services that has commenced operation on a full payment services in Singapore. It doesn't operate a license currently. So Get is actually exempt from licensing in Singapore right now. Yeah.
And why is that?
Yeah, so under regulations 28 of the payment service regulations, which is so the payments in Singapore with Kenny's payment consumer fintech product, it can be either banking or in the payments regime, and under the payments regime, which is governed by the payment services regulations or the Payment Services Act, they set out what are the what are the services, and they provide definitions for this, that if you provide this, what licenses you need to get. And but in Regulation 28 of the Payment Service Regulations, it provides a set of conditions in companies offering these services, but not exceeding certain volumes, that it does not need to get a license. It can remain exempted. And one of the prominent conditions is that an account to remain exempted cannot exceed, for example, 1,000 SGD balance on each personal account at any single point in time. Although these accounts can still have 30,000 inflow and outflow, so that may not make sense for an adult e-wallet, for example, because 1,000 SGD at any point in time may be too low. But for kids and teens in our segment, it is enough. And so, in summary, Get has put in these measures and implemented controls in place so that Get never, the exemptions don't fall away. So that Get remains within the conditions to remain exempted to run its operations.
Okay, and the reason for that question was because I wanted to compare Singapore with Indonesia.
Yep.
Because in general, when we look at Europe and we look at America, they are effectively like one geographic region, and they're one regulatory licensing kind of region. I mean, in Europe it's slightly different, but
yeah,
in general. So that's what I'm trying to get at here is how difficult and how many challenges and hurdles are you going to have to actually execute on that plan of all those different countries?
Yeah, so we've definitely identified that as a challenge for the Get thesis. So there are some neobanks with regional or multi-country aspirations, such as a Revolut or like a Mozpa in South America with Brazil and Mexico and having multiple countries. So similarly, Get does need to think about, okay, with the Pan Asia, how does it have a regulatory strategy and even be able to launch and comply with regulations across multiple countries and have that strategy. So I think there's just one thing I just want to characterize all of this is that across Asia, we do see that with payments laws, the principles that regulators have in what companies can and can't do are really very similar in thinking. So when it comes, for example, grading accounts like KYC or full KYC, or what are the conditions in order to remain exempted, certain balances. So in Indonesia, for example, there is a rule that you can remain exempted if the accounts don't exceed, for example, 2 million Indonesian rupiah at any single point in time. So there are similar, AML management principles, but when Get looks at a country, it can either operate itself, or it can just, for example, have a revenue share white labeling model, and it's just either one of these two partnerships, and both of those are operationally viable kind of approaches to actually commercialize its product. Because at the end of the day, this is just one thing that Get needs to tick that off the box when launching a country, but Get's really core focus is the mobile app experience, the branding experience, the customer, managing the customer relationship. And but yeah, in every country, Get can either just do it itself and have a similar operation like Singapore, or it could have a white label model where we would partner with a financial institution and they do what they do best, which is to deal with the compliance and to KYC each account on behalf of Get, and to meet the regulatory requirements. And then Get, we just focus on the customer relationship, and the incentive for these financial institutions is to share the volume, collect deposits. And banking as a service strategy for them is a way to create distribution without having to actually take the risk of building a product and brand that people love as well, but really leveraging on a fintech to do that. So for these countries, for Indonesia, we've actually taken that approach. Get has actually partnered with the financial institution to be able to deliver the solution, and our partner would do the KYC on these accounts, do the transaction monitoring. And they would communicate with Get servers, in the background about that, and this is a way for the Get brand to operate, but also meet the regulatory requirements as well.
Okay, Ralphie, any questions?
My questions are: going straight in the fundraising. So how much are you currently raising, and at what valuation?
Yeah, Get is currently looking for 300,000 US, and today we're looking at a post money of the round at 5 million USD.
And what is the minimum check size?
So we haven't really set a hard cap on the minute. We've set it at 10,000 USD.
Okay. And currently, like, who has already invested in this current round, or any multiple investors that we should be aware of?
Yeah, so I guess historically, Get has taken on some 500 Global is a early investor, and some notable fintech entrepreneurs themselves, such as Amrish Raul or Michele Ferrario is a investor, the founder and CEO of Stashaway and Zalora Asia as well, into Get. And aside from the capital, both Amrish and Michele, for example, out of many investors, provide a very unique perspective and bring the experience into just combining the intelligence to how the thesis for Get is built out. For example, Michele is one of the most credible brains when it comes to creating with Stashaway, being able to recruit multiple leaders across multiple Asian countries, product market fit when it comes to wealth management in multiple countries, and meeting regulatory requirements from a consumer side. So being able to leverage that intelligence and build that out for Get is very invaluable. But that's just one of the things. And part of the investors, when we look at this, we do try to understand what unique perspectives and intelligence they have, as well to sharpen Get's iron, so to speak, when it comes to thinking about the thesis as well, have more heads around the table.
That's looking at this slide, right? There's a very impressive set of investors who have already come in, and they bring in this very relevant skill set around finance, building a fintech app, and also growing a business in Indonesia. So it's a very promising set of investors. So my question to follow on that, right, is an angel were to invest now, what does an exit look like?
Yeah, it's a question. I think that the exit can come from, obviously, I guess financially, what I understand is it can come in a secondary round. It can come in the private market as well. And so I think that's how we've, from some of the friends, that's how a lot of early investors or founders are being able to cash out.
Maybe let me rephrase my question. Where do you see Get going to eventually? Like maybe 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. Like what are you building it towards? Are you building it to be a unicorn? Are you building it to a certain valuation so that you can get acquired by a financial institution? Like what's the end game for you?
Understand, yeah. So I think I'm very, very bullish on the idea of the thesis, which is to build Asia's largest financial institution for kids and teens in Asia, is $1 billion plus company or a multi-billion dollar company if all things are executed out. And so that, as from an execution standpoint, every day we're pretty much building out that value from an execution. That's what we want to do. Of course, along the way, when it comes to that institution itself is very valuable to many companies in the region where late stage fintech needing to set up that division, or whether it comes to potentially a traditional bank itself. And obviously, I think it's a question of time and premium. If there are very offers that are very premium that happen along the way, then obviously that can be discussed. And I think obviously as the thesis develops, it's not just a single person like myself that would be able to make the decision and discern that. So it's really hard to say what is that right number. But we have seen in this thesis that from a comparables analysis, some of the M&A deals that have happened in this space, for example, Rooster Money being bought out for close to 100 million by NatWest. Rooster Money was a kids pocket money app across Europe, And it just kind of shows that banks are trying to buy up these capabilities, of teams that have these products that really satisfy kids and teens. In the US, our global comparable, Greenlight, which many of the early employees and founders also got the secondaries cashed out as well, is now valued at $2.4 billion today. I think they're more today. The last round was Andreessen Horowitz and DST. There's closer, Step, is a closer unicorn company in the US. And yeah, there's a few M&A transactions and happen in this category that is something that early investors and myself and team members can look at as value that is trying to be traded around in this category. So in terms of having liquidity.
All right. Thanks for sharing all of that. I just very quickly wanted to know how big is the team size currently, and what's your burn, the monthly burn rate?
So the operationally, our burn right now is actually very, very well. It's actually fixed, irrespective of the number of customers that we have. Up to 500 children, technically speaking, at around 12,000, 13,000 SGD. With the help, and so that can be largely split into two categories of expenses. One, we spend about 5.5K in our fixed costs when it comes actually to running all the APIs and operations that support our pillars for the Get app to be to be consumed, which is a fixed fee that we pay the bank for the private API connection. And then secondly, we pay around $2,000 to AWS, for 2 instances that run all the APIs for up to 500K children. And there are actually no variable servicing costs when it comes to adding another customer. And that core reason was because we built our own AI systems to create a self-service customer support for all the children and parents as well. So we built it through Google TensorFlow, and we imported all our knowledge base. But Google TensorFlow, we leveraged their natural language processing to understand the intent of a customer's query, and that pretty much replaces all the support chat agents that we would have needed to have. Because then understanding the intent very accurately, we would then serve them the account operations or the information that they need, irrespective of the thousands of customers that we would have. Then on the separate to the 5,000 burn, we also have a salaries that support a team of about 5.5 people, and it's really myself, Liz, a co-founder and chief operating officer, which has years of experience and scaling consumer brands, strategizing a portfolio of companies and fintech in their marketing budget, and Liz is responsible for growing our revenue but keeping costs fixed while doing so. Billy, our co-founder and CTO, is a math Olympian champion in Vietnam. He's the valedictorian when it comes in computer science, and he was at Telio, which is a Quebec fintech based in Vietnam, and he managed a lot of mobile engineering and architecture scaling. Then we have Jaslyn, which operates in this office to do the card packing every day, and we have a list of orders and we get that out. And we also have a product manager or a QA person to test the app and the refinements every day before it is then available to all the parents within the day that are using the Get app.
Thank you for joining us for this episode, Daniel. So you've all heard from Daniel how he's building Asia's first neobank for kids and teens. And if you're keen to invest or you're keen to be part of Get's journey as they grow across the region, be sure to get in touch with Daniel. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to comment, like, and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.